What's up, bosses? Welcome to About Her Business, the podcast where we leave all the gossip at the door and get straight down to business. I'm your host, John Tay, and today we have the founder of Nourished by Taylor, Miss Taylor Lechner. Now, Miss Lechner is a registered and licensed birth control and hormone dietitian, helping women smoothly transition off birth control and heal their hormone symptoms naturally. And she's helping us find the balance today on what she means business. So, ladies, grab those cups and those notepads, and let's get down to it. The meeting is now in session. Welcome, Taylor.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. Are you ready to get into it?
Yes, let's do it.
Let's go. So, take us back to the beginning. What first drew you into the nutrition space, and what did your early career in the eating disorder field teach you about women's health and behavior?
Yeah, so this all stemmed, I've been very fortunate enough, I would say, to be so passionate what I do because it's all been from personal experience and where I've been let down. So that really sparked a passion in me to fill those gaps and help other women who are dealing with the same thing. My journey to becoming a dietitian started when I was 18. I knew I was really health conscious. I love nutrition. I love working out. I lost my period at that point in time and went to my doctor, and basically they were like, here's birth control. No one asked deeper questions of why that was happening. They basically said, just stay on that till you want to get pregnant. And what was actually going on was I was struggling with an undiagnosed eating disorder, but no one recognized it, struggling with an undiagnosed eating disorder. And I was just seen as the healthy girl. So no one recognized it, not even my parents, my friends, my doctor. I recognized it. I was like, I feel way too stressed. I was counting every single calorie that went in my mouth. I was exercising for hours every single day, but I was being revered as healthy. So that's what inspired me to go into the eating disorder space and just fell in love with it. I thought that's where I was going to stay my whole life, honestly, until I came off birth control and had 4 years of hormonal chaos, landed me in the hormone birth control space. But what it really taught me is that women are chronically underfueling themselves, and it's just normalized. And that's one of the biggest things that I work on with women is so many more often than not, when I start working with someone, I'm like, we need to eat more. But we've been conditioned to believe that carbs are bad, fat are bad, certain foods are bad. We shouldn't enjoy ice cream or things like that. So I really am passionate about working with women to heal their relationship with food, which in turn helps heal their hormones and their skin and their periods as well.
Now, you made an intentional pivot into a specific population, as you just spoke about. What was the moment or realization that pushed you towards becoming a birth control and hormone focused dietitian?
Yeah. So I was put on birth control 18, like I said. I stayed on that until I was 27, and I didn't realize the harm it was doing to my body until I listened to a random podcast, and they were talking all about the negative side effects of birth control. And one of the things they were talking about is how you're not actually having a period on birth control. And I remember sitting there at 27 years old with a master's degree in nutrition, very health aware and health conscious, being like, what? I had no clue what was happening in my own body. And there were other things that just started making sense. Decreases your stress resiliency. I had become just over time more and more anxious. And I just accredited that to that's just being an adult. But then I later realized it's because I had been on birth control at such a young age. And there's research showing that if you start birth control at 18 or below, or 19 or below, you have a higher risk of anxiety and depression. And so just things like that. And so like I always do, dug into the research, and I made a conscious decision to stop birth control. And I also want to just pause and say, I feel like I always have to say this disclaimer. I'm not anti-birth control. I think it's a very important decision that we all have as women. I think it's good that we have that decision, but I am anti non-informed consent. So I think it's big that we are educated of the negative side effects of birth control. And oftentimes, like myself, we're put on it for a reason other than purely pregnancy prevention, for painful or missing periods, for skin, for mood, things like that. But it's not getting to the deeper root cause of things. So then it's making things worse over time. And then when someone stops, if they want to have a family or if they just want to stop for whatever reason, those symptoms come rushing back, oftentimes worse than before. So when I stopped, I had done I'd healed my own relationship with food and with exercise. I was in a much healthier place. So I did get my period back, but my skin blew up. I struggled with horrible acne for 4 whole years. My anxiety spiked. I was having lots of intrusive thoughts, so anxious all the time, and no one could help me. I went to my doctor. I went to dermatologists. I went to naturopaths, functional nutritionists, like everything, and no one could help me. And I'm a dietitian. I was like, I feel like I should know how to fix my body, but I didn't. And so it wasn't until I went to my dermatologist one day and she basically was like, your only other options for your acne are like going on Accutane or going back on birth control. And I felt so frustrated. I went and I got in my car and I cried. And I was like, after I had my emotional moment, I was like, "You know what? If no one's going to help me figure this out, I'm going to figure out my own." So I ended up finding another dietitian who specializes in chronic skin conditions, and I went through her business coaching and her clinical education with advanced functional nutrition training, and my eyes were opened, and I became my own first client. I ran functional labs I'd never heard of. For the first time in my life, I had all this data of why my skin was breaking out, why my anxiety was so high, why my mood was off. And I was able to fix those things
Ab-
within about 12 months. And so when I did that and I saw, okay, there's options, there's solutions, and there's answers, but so many women aren't given that. And if I would have had that support, none of that would have happened. So it's like, it sucks that happened, but I'm grateful it happened at the same time because that's what lit the fire under me. I just kept seeing so many other women struggling with the same thing without any support. And I knew how that felt. So that's when I made the conscious decision to leave my manager position at the eating disorder facility I was at and open my own business specializing in helping women safely transition off birth control and heal their hormones naturally. Yep. Yeah, and so many women do, unfortunately, and they're just basically told you just have to go on birth control or that's just part of being a woman when that's not true.
Absolutely. How did getting more specific expand your business and attract the right clients?
Yeah, I love this question because I was terrified to niche down. Felt I was marketing to everybody because I learned all these things. I was like, I can work with gut health, I can work with acne, I can work with hormones. I was marketing to everyone. And what I found was I was attracting clients, but they weren't my dream clients. They were people I could help, but they weren't the most committed. They were flaky. They had failed payments. They just weren't clients that I truly enjoyed working with if I'm being transparent. And so I just had this nagging feeling of like, I didn't start my own business to have a business I hate, and I'm not loving where I'm at right now with it. And two, I'm attracting clients that are not ideal fits for my world. And so I actually ended up taking a pause and I went on my first vacation since starting my business at that point, and I completely disconnected for the first time because I was like in grind mode. And that was one of the best decisions I made. And I came back refreshed and I was like, I want to help women safely stop birth control. That's my story. That's my passion. And so I made that decision and it was really scary. But then I became so much clearer on my marketing. I became so much more targeted and I started having women who reached out to me and they were perfect fit. They were like dream ideal clients and they were amazing to work with and I loved working with them. I looked forward to seeing them for our sessions. And I had them saying, "You not only read my mind with your marketing, but you helped me so much and you changed my life." And that's the impact I wanted to have. And so it did feel scary, but then I started quickly realizing it was easier for me with my social media messaging, with who I was speaking to, because it was one targeted person that I viscerally knew because she was me. And I was attracting those dream clients. So that was almost like this confirmation of, okay, this is safe for me.
What were some of the early strategy decisions that helped you position yourself as an authority in this space?
So my own story is big, and I found that kind of like what you were saying earlier, people really connect when you've gone it through it yourself. I was actually just voice memoing a key client of mine recently or this morning, and we were talking about she's getting ready to stop birth control and she's terrified breaking out and her acne coming back. And so I was just talking to her, I was like, I get it. I totally understand that fear. I've been there myself and I understand. And that was one of her big reasons for working with me was she had seen lots of other providers. She had been put on all these elimination diets and none of it was working. And they also had never dealt with chronic skin issues. And so she was like, when I talked to you, you not only had credentials to back it up, being a registered dietitian, you not only had this functional nutrition training, like you have all these testimonials, but I feel like get me and you understand it. I never had someone who can the way that you can. So sharing my own personal story, I think is so powerful if that's a part of your business, if that's why you're in your business, if you are your own ideal client, because people connect with that. And especially in a world of social media and filters and just everything is great. All my clients are happy. I think just being real and honest with people, like people want that nowadays.
Now, how did you learn to communicate something as complex as hormones and birth control in a way that resonate and converts with others?
I should have mentioned this with your last question. I rely very heavily on functional lab testing because I am of the adage of test versus guess. That was the only thing that helped me heal. And that is the one of the pivotal turning points for my clients is they finally have data of why their periods are painful, why their skin is breaking out, why their periods are irregular. And so I with all of my programs, whether you're working with me on the highest VIP touch level or whether you're in a DIY program, there's some form of functional lab testing and that gives you data. And I make sure I send all my clients a video analysis of their labs, connecting it back to their symptoms. Because another thing I find is that so many women are dismissed by doctors or gaslit. That word I feel like is overused right now, but truly a lot of women are gaslight in the medical space when they've had chronic health issues and or when they've had lab tests done, the results weren't explained to them. And so I really want women to be informed of their health. That's something I lacked and I think is very empowering, especially when you feel out of control of your body. And so breaking it down based on the functional lab tests I do and connecting it back to their symptoms. And one thing that I actually don't do very frequently is I very rarely run hormone testing on my clients, which is surprising to most people since I am a hormone birth control dietitian. I learned very early on it gives you more questions than answers because it's like hormones are the tip of the iceberg. That's how I describe it. That's how symptoms like, of course, you're going to have hormone imbalances, but what's causing those hormone imbalances? And that's where I do the deeper testing of how's your gut? How's your inflammation? How are your nutrients? How is your vitamins and minerals? How are you detoxifying things? That sets me apart too, is the functional lab testing that I do is so unique and so different and so detailed and deep, get so many answers, even if they've run hormones before, even if they've done testing with their doctor and they're told everything is normal. So that's something that sets me apart. But then also, that's something that makes it make sense to people finally, because they're like, oh, it's not just my hormones. It's all these deeper layers that are leading to my hormones to be imbalanced and that are causing my symptoms.
Absolutely. And can you explain what the hormone test is and what it would actually look like and what type of detail it gives?
Yeah, the hormone testing that I don't typically run or the other testing I do.
You can actually explain both of them if you
Okay.
would.
So you can test your hormones in your sex hormones. So that's commonly what people think of with PMS, periods, skin, all that type of stuff. It's gonna be testosterone, estrogen, progesterone. Your thyroid has hormones and there's different things like that. But you can run those in the blood, but you have to make for sure you're running them at certain points in the month. And you cannot be on birth control if you run hormone testing because your hormones are flatline. They're not your natural ebb and flows. It's not going to be accurate. And because you have hormone fluctuations, you have to get your progesterone and your estrogen at certain times in the month. So if you have a provider, I see this mistake a lot is they're just like, oh, wait, let's just come in and do all your hormones at once. If you're a cycling female, that's not going to be accurate. And they're not informed with hormone healing. So that's a problem. You can, when I do run hormone testing, I prefer to run a Dutch test, which is a urine sample. So it not only shows your sex hormones, but it shows detoxification. It shows how you're utilizing those hormones. It can show cortisol, which is stress impacts everything. I do have some clients where, for example, I have a client who she came to me and was basically told, you're in perimenopause. She was having difficulty sleeping. She was having some breakouts, some stubborn weight gain she couldn't lose despite eating really healthy and exercising, and a lot of digestive issues and inflammation. So we started with all the other lab tests that I run, which I can go into in a second. And that helped her. She was in a much better place, but she was 38. She was just now getting married and she was just wanting to see if she was in perimenopause or if she could even start trying for a kiddo or if she needed to think about other options like adoption and stuff. And so she was an example where we did run a hormone test on her just to see, okay, how's your progesterone doing? How are your hormones doing? I will. Or if we're stuck, if we've done all the deeper work and we've done the lab testing and there are some things getting better, but some symptoms are still a little bit persistent or something's popped up, that can happen. Our bodies are very unique and things happen. Then we might run some hormone testing, but it's never what I do in the first pass. So that's the hormone testing I recommend. I prefer the Dutch test, or you can do some stuff in the blood. Just make sure you're getting them at the right time and working with a provider who understands that. The tests that I lean on more and that I run the most with my clients are there's four main ones. I run on all my clients as a hair tissue mineral analysis. This is a detailed assessment of your minerals, and it's also really cool. I'm sure you and your listeners will like this because of the emphasis on mental health. It shows you what state your nervous system is in. So it shows you if you're more sympathetic dominant, if you're more shut down, depressed, or if you're more fight or flight, like high energy, sympathetic dominant. It also shows you detailed insight into if you have any toxic metals, which can cause inflammation and a whole host of symptoms, and other body systems. So how is your thyroid functioning on a cellular level? How are you digesting food, because certain nutrients or certain minerals like sodium, potassium impact stomach acid, and that impacts our ability to absorb and digest food. So you can be eating really healthy, taking all the supplements, but if you're not absorbing your food because of mineral deficiencies or something else, then that defeats the purpose. So that's the HTMA. And then I run a comprehensive stool test to look at good bacteria in the gut, bad bacteria. Again, another layer of how are you digesting food. It also shows if there's any inflammation in the gut, any sensitivities, for example. And then I do a comprehensive blood panel. I look at thyroid. I look at a full iron panel because I see iron overload oftentimes can be an issue, low nutrients. And one thing I will say with blood labs is that I'm not only running things that are different than what your GP is running, I'm also looking at it from a different lens of what's optimal for women's health versus what's normal, because the reference ranges are extremely wide. So, for example, B12, which is really important for mood and energy and hormones, conventional medicine says it can be anywhere from 200 to 1,000 is normal and okay, versus I want to see it above 900. That's what's considered optimal for me. And so I have a lot of women who they're like, I've had all these lab tests run and I have been told they're normal. And I was like, did we have these lab tests run? And with your blood labs, pull them up. Let's go through them together, what you've had. And 99% of the time, I'm like, that's not normal to me. That's not optimal. They're not flagging it until it's a disease state, which isn't, no wonder you don't feel good. And then the last one I run is an iodine loading test, which iodine is a mineral that is really important for detoxification, really important for skin health. It's really important for preventing certain cancers like breast, ovarian, and prostate cancers. And everyone I've tested is low in iodine. It's also really important for thyroid function and energy as well. So those are the tests that I run that impact hormones versus just testing the hormones directly.
Wow, and thank you for explaining to our audience because that is powerful. You're a real deal digging deep, deep. And
Yes.
I because it can refer back to mental health, it can affect your metabolism, it can affect your intake of the proteins that you're putting in your body. So you're doing a real deep assessment. And I just really thank you for explaining that to our audience on it, exactly what assessments you use, because oftentimes people have all these assessments that they give out, but they're not actually explaining it to their audience or to their clients rather. And everybody's going, is this good for me? So thank you for going into much detail for my audience. I truly appreciate you on that one.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about how do you build the trust with women who feel dismissed by traditional healthcare systems, because you've told your own personal story as well as a lot of the women that you deal with. So how do you build that trust?
So I think the first thing is, yeah, just validating like I've been there too. And just I'm an open book pretty much and share a lot of things. And I have my own podcast. And I find that's a really good way when people hear your voice and when they hear you talking about those things, that can be really helpful. And I also will have clients who come on the podcast as well. And so, me not only sharing my own story, but also having other clients not just have a blurb on my website of this worked for me, this was great working with Taylor, but them coming on and like talking about where they started, the process, what went well, what was challenging. I want my clients to be like really real because the hormone healing journey is not all sunshine, rainbows, and butterflies. There's healing is non-linear. And so I want them to come on and just be transparent of, hey, this was easy for me, or this part was harder for me, but Taylor helped me through it and we pivoted or we stayed the course and having that support was super helpful. And this worked. And here's where I started and here's where I am now. And here's why it was worth it for me. I think that's really powerful to have other real people, not only you being really yourself, but also having other real people who you can relate to. Because there are so many of us who are dealing with these things and we just think it's a us problem, or we're told that it's just part of being a woman or this is just how we are. But when you have other women who are connecting and you're like, Oh, I also snap at my partner and then I'm in the bathroom crying 10 minutes later because I'm like, why the heck did I do that the week before my period? I'm not the only one. I'm not crazy. This girl on Taylor's podcast also did that. And now she found XYZ reasons in her labs and here's what they did. And now she's not doing that. That can be really helpful in building that trust.
Now, we've talked about the business, so let's talk about the monetization side of everything. What does your business model look like today, and how did you decide which offers made the most sense for your industry?
Yeah, I will say it's drastically evolved. Started out really offering high ticket, my VIP one-on-one coaching, which I still have. That's the program I love. That's the program that gets the clients the best results because they have that high touch support. They get all the lab testing. They have me in their back pocket every step of the way. And it's an investment. It's over $4,000 over a 5-month span. So it's something where I recognize that, especially in this market right now where there is a lack of trust, people have been burned before. People are more protective of where they're spending their money. They oftentimes don't wanna jump into a $4,000 program, and there's a lot of fear around that. Even if they trust you or they're like, "This seems great," they're nervous about that, and so I created a couple different offers below that. I have my reset, which is just the hair tissue mineral analysis and a DIY plan, and that is something like if they just want a starting point with some functional lab testing, a personalized protocol, and some answers, that's a great place. And then I also created a mid-ticket offer where it's my accelerator, where they get 6 weeks of support with me. They get 2 functional lab tests, and within that, there's different tracks. So depending, I have like an acne and gut track, a PMS anxiety track, and a painful periods track. So depending on what their chief symptoms are, they go into a certain track, and that determines which of the 2 labs we run. And they get their personalized protocol. They get 1 session with me and then 6 weeks of chat support, private chat support as they're implementing things. So those 2 offers, I previously had just the reset, the lowest one, less than $500, and the highest one, $4,000. And when I switched business coaches and started working with someone new, she was like, we need to have something in the middle that the person who wants more than the DIY plan, but isn't quite ready or able to do the high touch VIP, something in between. And so that's where we made the accelerator. And it's been, I feel like my sweet spot right now because they created those things. And then the last thing I just recently am testing out right now is something called the Hormone Healing Testing Bundle, which is just the lab testing and a video analysis. So that's specifically designed for the woman who has been burned before, who has been told everything looks normal, who really wants to feel better, but is just really scared to invest, or just honestly is like curious of what's off with me. Doesn't necessarily need the coaching or want the coaching or the personalized plan. I've sold a couple of those. I just launched that last month and we'll see how it goes. But I think that's going to be a really good way for people to get answers and clarity. And then if they want that personalized support and protocols, then they can upgrade into my VIP coaching from there.
Do you take insurance, or is it all cash based? Do you offer payment plans?
So it's all cash based. It's not, I don't take insurance because insurance doesn't cover functional labs. So I did try taking insurance when I first started, but I couldn't provide the level of care and get the results I wanted. So I find that this model with the functional lab testing and the high touch support gets much better results. So I do offer lots of payment plan options. So I always tell women I never want finances to be a barrier to getting the support you need. So even the person I was mentioning I was voice memoing today, like she's on a 17-month payment plan with me. So it's a risk that I take in my business, but I filter out the women I offer that to, and I've not been burned so far with that. That might change in the future as my business grows, but right now that's something that it makes care more accessible and it gets women support they need while also making it financially more comfortable for them.
Now, for my women out there who may be starting a service based business, I want to get some advice from you. What would you say are the key components to create offers that are both impactful and profitable?
It's a good question. I think you have to really think about what your ideal client needs. Not necessarily what you think people will pay for, but what they need. I feel like I heard that from a business coach one time or a podcast I listened to with a business coach where it's like people think they want something, but that's not actually what they need. And I think you have to find the balance between both of those things because obviously you want to sell your service and help people, but you also have to think about what's going to get them results. So I also think you have to evolve that over time. Don't feel like you have to be like going in or starting your business that you have to know exactly what your offer suite looks like because, like I said, mine has evolved over. I've been in business about 2.5 years now, so still relatively younger. So that's an example of when I was like, okay, I feel like there's a gap of people who just want the testing. They want to get that buy-in. So let's create just a testing bundle for them. And then once they get those answers, then maybe there's more of that. Okay, this girl knows what she's doing. She is giving me answers that I've never gotten before. I feel more confident working with her.
Now, I do want to ask you for my women entrepreneurs out there because a lot of people are going, how does hormone imbalances affect me? How are hormone imbalances quietly affecting women entrepreneurs in ways they may not even realize?
Oh my gosh, how much time do we have? If you are feeling bad yourself, and this can look like all the things I talked about that are just unfortunately normalized. This is just part of being a woman, or this is just part of getting older. This is part of perimenopause or menopause or coming up birth control, whatever it is. It's like you don't deserve to feel like that. Just the healthcare system was not designed for women. Women weren't included in clinical research trials until the 1990s. And even now, a lot of our data is not based on women test subjects. I think it's really important to know that it's not okay to feel bad. So if you're constantly fatigued, if your hair is falling out, if you're dealing with any chronic skin issue, I know I've mentioned acne quite a bit, but any eczema, psoriasis, I work with those things as well. Those impact your confidence. Those impact your ability to show up on social media or get out there for a presentation to network, right? If you're having debilitating periods where you have to take a week off of work or you have to cancel clients because you're down for the count for a week out of the month. Those are all things that impact your profitability and also impact how you show up in your business and therefore inadvertently impact where your business is going.
What are some of the common symptoms women should stop ignoring, especially if they're trying to perform at a high level in business, in your opinion?
Yeah. Anything period related. So your period's your fifth vital sign. It's just as important as your blood pressure and your heart rate, for example. So if you have irregular missing periods or really painful, heavy, debilitating periods, that is a sign from your body of, hey, girl, I'm waving a red flag right now and you're not listening to me. But that's typically doctors are like, oh, just take birth control or try different birth control. They don't dig deeper of why that's happening. So anything period related, anything mood related, honestly, I just gave a presentation to a group of therapists a couple weeks ago about this, how mood is it's more than just mental, it's physiological. There are so many things that impact your mood, your gut, your minerals, your nutrients, so many things. And so if you have any PMS, mood swings, anxiety, depression, and you're doing all the things right, you're eating healthy, you're meditating, you're doing yoga, you're trying to manage your stress, you're seeing a therapist, you're on anxiety medication, and you're working, that's what I would encourage you to dig deeper and work with someone who does the functional lab testing I do to uncover what's driving that. And then we talked about skin stuff. I think those are the big ones, and fatigue. That's another one that I feel like people just not purposely, but make excuses for. Oh, it's because I'm busy in my business, or it's because I'm a mom. And I'm sure you can relate with a young kiddo where it's like, I'm a mom and I'm running a business and I'm doing all these things. But at the same time, there are ways you can support your body so you're not feeling like that. There are deeper internal things that, like low minerals, for example, that can really help. Just having putting minerals in your water can help with your energy so much. And then, of course, digestive issues too.
So, how heavy are we talking about when it comes down to the periods?
So if you're going through, yeah, it's hard for me to say because it depends on the person, what that looks like. But if I would say if you're going through a period an hour, or not period, a tampon per hour, or you're like bleeding through your pad and you have to change it every hour or multiple times an hour. I forget exactly if it's this amount, but I feel like that doesn't really resonate as much as tampons or pads. If you have a cup that you have to dump out every hour too much, that's a sign. And especially also if there's any other symptoms with it, of cramping or extreme fatigue, lightheadedness, that's a sign that your body is like, it's too much.
Now, let's talk about the women that are coming off of birth control because this is something that you specialize in. What does a proactive strategic transition look like from your perspective?
I'm a big fan of the functional lab testing before because you want to ID, especially if you're put on birth control for a reason other than purely pregnancy prevention. You want to ID what has been masked by birth control for that entire time. Because, for example, with the heavy periods, that's just not going to go away. If you were put on birth control and that kind of sort of helps, or it does help, or maybe it didn't help, that those root causes are still festering. And because of how birth control impacts every single system in your body, it's making those things worse. So the longer you're on it, and if you haven't corrected those things through targeted testing, nutrition, lifestyle changes, they're going to come roaring back. So I'm a big fan, and this is test versus guess, because when you have that data, you're not one, wasting your money, right? I think a lot of times people look retroactively of, oh, I'm just going to stop and see what happens. And I'm like, okay. And then I have people who come back and they're like, I should have done the testing before. And now I'm like reverse engineering. And that was me too, because I didn't know any better. But if you're proactive and you want to have a smooth transition off, testing before. And I recommend about 3 to 4 months of prep work. So that's what I do with my women who are prepping to come off birth control. We do the functional testing, we do the deep dive assessment, and then we work on strategic protocols based on what we find in the labs to repair those imbalances over the course of 3 to 4 months, and then they transition off. And with my experience, that has a almost 99% success rate with being symptom free for the most part. I have clients who they came off and they're like, I'm really scared. I'm really nervous. I know we did all this work, but what if XYZ symptoms come back? And then they message me. They're like, I had my first period and it wasn't painful and it was on time and my skin isn't breaking out. And it's very successful when you do that testing and you get those answers. And then you have that personalized plan to get to those deeper root causes. Yeah, and it depends on what program you're in, right? So, like, with my VIP coaching program, like, that's where it's 5 months minimum, and then I have extension options at a discounted rate for women who, like, they're seeing results and maybe they wanna get pregnant, so we wanna work on that's our next goal is, like, first, they start working with me because they wanna safely transition off birth control without painful periods coming back or without breakouts, and then they're like, "Okay, great. I've seen that this works, and I really value the support and the testing and the strategy, so now, like, we shift goals and we work on optimizing fertility, which we already were doing when we're getting to those deeper root causes. But that's something that we just shifted to. Okay, we're off birth control now. Like, what other things can we do, nutrition, lifestyle wise, to support a healthy pregnancy?
Now, let's talk about the root cause and functional approaches. How does that from conventional care, and why is it important for long-term results in your opinion?
So, and when we're saying conventional testing is just the blood labs your doctor is going to run, looking at it from a what's normal perspective versus functional is more why is this happening? So, those deeper root causes. So it's just going to give you a lot more data because it's looking at every single body system. There's more information about gut and skin, which is great, but we also have to look at like deeper of like we said earlier, if you have those mineral imbalances, that's going to make it so your digestion is not functioning. So it may not even be a digestive thing. It might not be bacteria overgrowth. It might be mineral imbalances. So we have to look at the body as a whole. And that's where running all those labs is so powerful and helpful because we're not looking at it in terms of what's normal or just one system or part of the puzzle. We're getting the whole puzzle pieces together and we're putting them together strategically. So it makes sense for your specific case and your specific body.
So, for my entrepreneurs who are listening right now that may feel burnt out or disconnected, let me get some advice from you. What are a few foundational shifts she can start making today to support both her health and her business performance?
Yeah. The first thing is regulating your nervous system, which is like not sexy to talk about. No one wants to talk about that. They're like, tell me what I need to eat or what supplements to take or whatever. But I found that's been the stickiest for me as well. And I actually just recently invested into a nervous system coach for myself because I realized that's still an area for me that I find that if I get a stressful email or if a client sends me this message that I get dysregulated sometimes more than often than I would like to. And you can't make rational decisions when you're in that nervous system state of like fight or flight. So the first thing I would say is regulating your nervous system. And for me, what's been helpful, even before investing in this coach for a deeper understanding of the why behind it, is taking time off and not constantly pushing, which feels really uncomfortable because it feels like, especially when you're first starting out, you have to be scrappy, right? You have to build a brand for yourself. You have to get your name out there. You are doing those things. But like I said earlier, where it's like I took that I didn't take a vacation for a whole year. I was working weekends. I was working constantly working and I was burning myself out. And then I finally took a cruise and I did not pay for internet and I was like completely disconnected. And then I came back and I was so refreshed. And attracted people because I was refreshed. The energy you put out is the energy you bring in. And I have found time and time again, and I'm sure you can speak to this too. It's like when you're in a calm nervous system state and when you release some of that control, which is really hard, but when you can, people find you and things just start falling into place versus when you're constant like push, it's like it doesn't happen. So it feels counterintuitive, but taking rest, taking breaks, just evaluating. And that's hard for a number of reasons, but one thing for me I'll share is one of the benefits of being an entrepreneur is that you can make your own schedule and you have flexibility. And so I kept finding myself putting myself in these boxes of, oh, I can never work on the weekends because I did that and that burnt me out. But then again, there are times where it's like today, after I record this podcast, I'm going out of town for a wedding. And so I'm working a half day today. And tomorrow, I don't have anything until the wedding. So I'm going to bring my laptop and I may or may not do some work, or I might not do something on Sunday. So I kept trying to put myself in these boxes like I can never work on the weekend, or I have to work on the weekend, or I have to have a 9 to 5. And I've just realized it's like it just ebbs and flows. And that's part of the cool part of being an entrepreneur is it's not stagnant. It's not always a 9 to 5. And you have control over that, but you have to feel out your nervous system and like where you're at. And it's going to change. So it's sometimes I do have to set boundaries where I'm like, I'm not working on the weekend. And then other times I'm like, I feel inspired. I want to, or it's rainy, it's gross, it's winter. I feel like diving into work.
Absolutely. And a little bit about myself to keep myself from burning out because I run 2 podcasts and a blog and I'm a mother. And I literally have made the rule of no interviewing on weekends. And I'm actually doing my first one out of this entire time tomorrow. And it was just my bad on scheduling. But it is, you have to set those boundaries with yourself because if you don't, you are going to burn out. And you're right. We as women, we just think that we have to go in order to be successful because eventually we think that we're going to get there. But sometimes it doesn't work out that way, y'all. Sometimes it does take a reset and getting to know yourself again, giving yourself that grace, giving yourself that break in order to start attracting in the clients, the money, and the resources that you need in order to grow your business. So Taylor, thank you for bringing that up because I have my boundaries in place and I'm gonna stick with them, y'all. So now, sadly, we've come to the end of today's conversation. And we always leave with a legacy here on About Her Business. And I'll give you a couple of seconds to think about this, Taylor. When you think about the bigger picture, what kind of legacy are you building?
Yeah, I want to really make an impact in this world and in women's health. I see myself, I want to be on professional stages. I love presenting, I love being on podcasts. I'm a weirdo who actually loves public speaking because I just find it to be such a powerful way to get the word out there. And that's the biggest thing is I want to just educate women and show them that feeling bad and having these hormone symptoms or being changed a birth control as their only option for tamping those down is not the only way. And because there's so much noise, there's so much misinformation out there about hormone health and nutrition and all of that, that just is harming women and it's not personalized. And so I really want to be a big name one day and just be out there as the women's health expert who specializes in and have a proven process that has helped thousands of women, hopefully one day millions of women, to help them. I don't know, million, maybe that's a little too ambitious, but thousands of women who help them transition off birth control and heal their hormones without needing to say change a birth control or these elimination diets or band-aid solutions.
Absolutely. And sadly, we have come to the end of today's episode, but y'all know I'm going to make sure I get all of Miss Taylor's information. Let us know how we can find your services. Let us know your socials. Let us know where we can find the podcast. Let us know all the details.
Yeah, so I'm most active on Instagram. So you can find me at Nourished by Tay on Instagram and feel free to shoot me a DM. Even if you listen to this conversation, you had some light bulb moments. I absolutely love hearing from y'all. And then I have my podcast is on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, all the things. It's called She's in Sync. And you can also, I release a new episode every single Monday. I love doing my podcast, and that's a great place to find me as well. And I think I also sent you my free breakup with birth control masterclass maybe. So if not, the link to my website is below. You can check out, I have a freebie on there too with my step-by-step process, a detailed look into labs, case studies, all that kind of stuff. Even if birth control isn't a piece of your story and you're just having hormone imbalances, it's a really great inside look at like how I approach those things. Again, the labs, the protocols, the deeper root causes that could be leading to those.
Absolutely. And I will be leaving all that information down in the description box below. Any final words before we adjourn today's meeting, Taylor?
I don't think so. I feel like we covered it all. Thank you so much for having me, and hopefully this was helpful to your listeners.
And with that, ladies, today's meeting is now adjourned. Thanks again to registered and licensed birth control and hormone dietitian, Miss Taylor Lechner, for coming on and sharing all her insights. And you be sure to subscribe to About Her Business wherever you see podcasts so you never miss whenever we upload. Also, leave me some comments down in that comment section on which industry you think I should interview next. Until next time, keep those goals tight, those circles tighter, and those bank accounts growing.